I was standing right next to the Christmas ham when my sister's hand cracked across my face, the sound sharp against the clatter of forks. Dad saw it all. He watched very closely, and then said only 3 words: "Lower your voice." That night, I decided I would make the whole family hear me, with evidence, with the law, and with a plan nobody could predict. My name is Marin Blake. I am 31 years old. My job title, the one on my business cards and my email signature, is Specialist for Aurelia MedTech. I work with cardiovascular devices, stents, valves, the small intricate machinery that keeps human hearts beating. It is precise, demanding work. It requires an exhaustive attention to detail, an ability to anticipate problems before they arise, and a deep, quiet focus. It is work that saves lives. In my family, however, my job title has always been the responsible one, or the quiet one, or most often, nothing at all. I am the background infrastructure. We lived, or rather, they still live, and I existed, in Lakeport, a perfectly curated town in the Midwest. Lakeport is a place where curb appeal is a moral imperative, where the lawns are obsessively manicured, and the high school football team's record is discussed with the gravity of geopolitical strategy. Reputations are the local currency, and the Blakes, my family, were desperate to be solvent. My father, Gordon, is a man who measures his life in the shine on his sedan and the fourth-quarter statistics of whatever game is currently blazing on the 72-inch television that dominates the living room. My mother, Elena, is the chief curator of our family's public exhibit. Her domain is the spotless home, the seasonal front door wreath, the polite, brittle smile she deploys at church functions. She operates under the constant, humming anxiety of what the neighbors will think. And then, there is Sloane, my older sister. Sloane, 34, mother of 2 energetic, often jam-covered children. Sloane, the aspiring entrepreneur, whose online boutique, a rotating inventory of imported scarves and rustic chic home decor, is her entire identity. Sloane, who is a whirlwind of manufactured crises, the gravitational center of all family drama, a black hole that consumes all available light, attention, and oxygen. This Christmas, like every Christmas before it, I was the stagehand for the performance. I arrived 3 days early, using my paid time off. I did this not because I wanted to, but because the unspoken expectation was that I was the one who drove to 3 different grocery stores to find the specific brand of smoked paprika Mom insisted on. I was the one who degreased the oven racks, listening to the metallic scrape, and scrubbed the grout in the guest bathroom until my knuckles were raw. I made the cranberry sauce from scratch, the berries popping and simmering on the stove, because Mom insisted the canned, jellied rings were tacky and what those neighbors do. I stood at the kitchen island for hours, peeling a mountain of potatoes, the starchy water cold on my hands. Across the room, Sloane, angled perfectly under the warm glow of a kitchen ring light she'd propped up on the counter, was performing. She was doing a last-minute holiday haul live stream for her boutique. Her voice was amplified, bubbly, and threaded with a false intimacy as she spoke to her phone. "You guys, this chunky knit throw is everything right now. It's just so hygge." Meanwhile, I chopped onions, the fumes stinging my eyes. In the living room, the television roared as Dad analyzed the failures of the offensive line. I was the one ensuring the machinery of the holiday actually functioned. I set the table. I polished the silver. I located the missing gravy boat. I moved through the house like a ghost with a to-do list, a silent utility, while the stars of the show, Sloane and her sales figures, Dad and his football team, performed their loud, important lives. Dinner was almost ready. The ham, glazed and studded with cloves, was resting. The kitchen was finally quiet, save for the hum of the dishwasher. I wiped my hands on the damp apron tied around my waist, feeling a small, rare spark of genuine personal pride. I had been holding this news for a week, waiting for the right moment. This was it. "I actually have some good news," I said. My voice sounded strange. cleaving through the established atmosphere of sports commentary and phone scrolling. Mom looked up from her phone, her brow furrowed slightly, as if surprised I had initiated an unscheduled conversation. Dad grunted, his eyes still locked on the instant replay. My end-of-year review was last week, I continued, pushing my voice to stay steady. And they're promoting me. I'm moving up to Senior Product Liaison for the new tricuspid valve division. I paused, waiting. I had practiced this announcement in the car. It was a significant step. It meant I would be coordinating the international clinical trials. It was a leadership role. It meant a pay bump of nearly 20%, enough to finally clear my student loans and build a real savings. The room did not erupt in applause. It did not fill with congratulations or questions. Instead, a profound, heavy silence descended. It was the sound of a vacuum, a dead channel. It was the most acute sound I had ever heard. Dad's eyes, which had flicked to me for perhaps a single second, returned to the screen. He cleared his throat. Mom offered a tight, brief smile that did not reach her eyes. It was a facial gesture that simply acknowledged sound. "Oh," she said, "that's nice, dear." Then, her gaze dropped back to her phone, her thumb resuming its rhythmic scrolling. Sloane, who was busy editing a photo of her kids by the fireplace, didn't look up at all. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10. It felt like an hour. My skin prickled. Then, Sloane sighed, a loud, theatrical exhalation of frustration. "Ugh, this filter is washing out Juniper's sweater. It makes her look pale. Mom, do you think this caption is better or worse than my holiday hooligans?" And just like that, the vacuum was filled. The focus snapped back to its default setting. My promotion, my career, my news. It was not just ignored, it was annihilated. It was swallowed whole by the immediate, pressing importance of Sloane's Instagram filter. This was the rhythm. It had always been the rhythm. My achievements were not problems. They were not crises. And in the Blake family, if it wasn't a crisis, it didn't require attention. I found myself suddenly, vividly, remembering my high school graduation. I was salutatorian. I had spent weeks on my speech, practicing the cadence, agonizing over the central metaphor. I never gave it. We spent the first half of the ceremony in the high school parking lot, the minivan door open, arguing. Sloane, then 20, had chosen that precise morning to announce she was dropping out of community college to find herself on a cross-country road trip with a boyfriend we'd never met, a guy who played bass in a failing band. My mother was weeping, my father was yelling. My speech, neatly typed on 5x8 index cards, stayed in the humid pocket of my polyester gown. I remembered my 21st birthday, a milestone. I had booked a small table at a new Italian restaurant, the kind of place with exposed brick and expensive cocktails. It was canceled, an hour before we were supposed to meet. Sloane had a total existential breakdown over a bad haircut. A stylist had apparently given her suburban mom layers. My parents had to spend the entire evening managing the crisis, which involved threatening to sue the salon and then taking Sloane for emergency ice cream. I ate lukewarm takeout lo mein alone in my dorm room. I remembered landing the job at Aurelia MedTech, my first real job. I called home from my tiny campus apartment, buzzing with excitement. My mother listened for maybe 45 seconds before interrupting me mid-sentence. "That's nice, honey. Really? Listen, can you talk to your sister? She's convinced her new landlord is poisoning her ficus tree. She says the leaves are betraying her. She won't listen to me, but she'll listen to you." The family group chat. Blake Family Updates was a digital monument to my invisibility. It was a constant stream of Sloane's life. Dozens of blurry photos of her children smeared with jam or spaghetti. Screenshots of customer praise for her boutique. Links to her newest product inventory. Urgent questions about rashes. I would try to insert myself. I'd post a question. "Does anyone want to FaceTime this Sunday around 4? Or a piece of news. "Just finished my first 5K race." My message would hang there. A lonely blue bubble. Hours would pass. Sometimes a full day. Then, a sudden flurry of new activity, burying my text, a picture of my nephew holding a worm, a complaint from Sloan about her shipping provider, a request from Mom for my Netflix password because hers stopped working. My message would just hang there, unread, unseen, pushed up the screen by the immediate, urgent, trivial noise of everyone else. What I felt in those moments, standing in the kitchen after my promotion was erased, wasn't anger. Anger is hot. It's a productive emotion. It demands action. It wasn't even sadness, which is soft and vulnerable and requires comfort. It was a cold, hard, crystallized disappointment. It was the deep, weary, 31-year-old knowledge that I did not exist to them as a person to be celebrated, only as a utility to be used. I was the reliable one, the fixer, the free babysitter, the emergency contact. The dynamic was simple, established over 3 decades. When they needed me, I was there. When Sloan needed a babysitter at the last minute because her vendor fare was mandatory, I was the first and only call. When Dad needed his taxes organized, my color-coded spreadsheets were the expected standard. When Mom needed someone to just listen while she complained about Sloan's spending habits for 2 straight hours, I was the silent, reliable, non-judgmental receptacle. It was a one-way street, paved over thousands of days of my own compliance. I had built the road they used to drive right over me. In the center of the oak dining table in Lakeport, the one I had just finished polishing, there was a long, pale scratch. It had been there since I was 12. Sloan, in a rage about my borrowing one of her sweaters without asking, had thrown a glass paperweight across the room. It missed me and skipped across the table, leaving a jagged groove. For nearly 20 years, every time I polished that table for a holiday, my cloth would snag on that groove. I'd scrub at it, apply special furniture oils, try to fill it with those waxy wood filler sticks, but the scratch always remained, a pale, jagged, permanent line under the varnish. I was that scratch. I was that futile effort. I spent my whole life trying to buff myself out, to make the surface of the family smooth again, ignoring the fact that I was polishing a wound I hadn't even made. The silence after my promotion announcement was the last time. It was the moment the wax in the scratch finally crumbled, revealing the raw wood underneath. 2 weeks later, I was in my own apartment in Lakeport, surrounded by cardboard boxes. I had put in for a transfer. The company had a major opening in a new territory, a growing hub. I took it without negotiating. I just signed. I was taping up a box labeled kitchen glasses when my phone rang. The screen flashed. Mom. My stomach tightened. The old familiar reflex. "Hi, honey," she said, her voice breezy, the nothing is wrong voice. "Just calling to see what time you can pick up the kids. Sloan has a last-minute vendor fair she just found out about, and it's a huge opportunity." I stopped, the packing tape dispenser heavy in my hand. I looked at the half-empty room, the couch shrouded in a plastic drop cloth, the bare walls where my pictures used to be. "I can't," I said. The silence on the other end was different this time. Not the dismissive silence of the promotion, but a sharp, confused silence. "What do you mean? You can't. It's just for a few hours. She needs you." "I mean, I am not available," I said, the words feeling strange and solid in my mouth. "I am in the middle of packing." "Packing? Packing for what? A vacation?" A note of impatience entered her voice. "I'm moving," I said. "Moving where? Across town? Did you find a better building?" "No," I took a breath, anchoring myself by the stack of boxes. "I'm moving to North Carolina. My transfer was approved." There was a sharp intake of breath. "Marin, that's not funny. That's absurd. Sloan needs you today. Just come by around 3. You can pack this weekend." "I can't. Mom, my lease is up. The movers are coming on Friday. I am leaving." But you didn't ask us," she sputtered, as if I had just violated a core tenet of our family constitution. "I'm telling you now." I didn't say, "I'm sorry." I didn't offer to reschedule my entire life. I just stated the fact. It was the first time in 31 years I had prioritized my own logistics over their manufactured, last-minute demands. It was the first time I hadn't said yes or okay or I'll make it work. It was the first no. It felt like breaking a bone, but I knew it was the only way to set it properly. I decided on Redwood Ridge, a city near the Carolina coast, precisely because it was 1,150 miles away from Lakeport. It was a place I had only visited once, for my final interview. It had trees that weren't maples and air that smelled like pine and the distant tang of salt, not just damp Midwestern earth. It was a place where no one knew me as Sloane's sister, a place where no one would call me at 9 at night needing a last-minute favor. It was a place where I could hang my own pictures, buy my own coffee from a barista who didn't know my family history, and listen to the sound of my own thoughts, uninterrupted. I was ending the cycle of unconditional availability. I was leaving the house where my voice disappeared the moment I spoke it. I was done trying to fix the scratch on the table. I was going to build my own. My apartment in Redwood Ridge was small, just over 600 square feet, with a balcony that overlooked a courtyard filled with crepe myrtle trees instead of a manicured, judgmental lawn. It was on the third floor of a walk-up, and the walls were thin enough that I could sometimes hear my neighbor practicing classical guitar. I loved it. It was the first space that was entirely, unequivocally mine. The first thing I did, before I even bought a proper sofa, was find my coffee shop. It was a place called The Grind, 3 blocks away, smelling of dark roast and cardamom. The first day, I was small latte. The third day, I was Marin, the barista, a young woman with turquoise hair, would see me walking in and just nod toward the espresso machine. "The usual?" she'd ask. That simple acknowledgement felt more like a welcome than anything I'd ever experienced in Lakeport. The second thing I did was go to the county animal shelter. That's where I found Pip. He was a miniature poodle, a terrified bundle of apricot-colored curls who had been abandoned in a foreclosed home. He was nervous, anxious, and desperately needed a routine. We were, I realized, a perfect match. My mornings were no longer defined by the high-strung, demanding ding of the Blake family updates group chat, a sound that always made my shoulders seize up. My new alarm was the jingle of Pip's collar tags and a cold, wet nose bumping against my hand at 6:30 a.m. Our new ritual was a long walk, coffee in hand, through the quiet, pine-scented streets. This replaced the old ritual of checking my phone first thing, bracing myself for the day's first crisis from Sloane, or the passive-aggressive guilt trip from my mother. I put that group chat on permanent mute. My pulse, which used to spike before 9 in the morning, finally settled. At Aurelia MedTech, I was not the quiet one. I was the new senior product liaison who had relocated from the Midwest hub, and they assumed I was competent. The assumption was liberating. I discovered, in the neutral-carpeted, well-lit conference rooms of the Carolina office, that my voice actually carried. In Lakeport, my opinions were vapors. Here, they were data points. "The Phase 2 protocols in the EU are too broad," I said in my first major planning meeting, my heart hammering. "We need to tighten the exclusion criteria if we want clean data for the FDA submission." The lead cardiologist, a man with an intimidating reputation, didn't look at his phone. He didn't tell me to lower my voice. He just squinted at the presentation. "Show me," he said. I did. I pulled up the comparison studies, the charts, the data I had spent nights analyzing. I spoke clearly. I presented facts. When I finished, the room was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence. It was the silence of people thinking, not the silence of people dismissing. "She's right," the cardiologist said, nodding to the project head. "Tighten the criteria. Blake, good catch." I walked out of that room feeling 6 inches taller. A few weeks later, I was the one leading the presentation for a new transcatheter valve trial. I finalized the contracts. I signed my name, Marin Blake, on the line that said, Project Lead. My work, which had always been precise, was now becoming visible. I was thriving. My new life began to take on a shape defined by me, not by the needs of others. The center of that new life became the riverfront park, a long, green stretch of grass that bordered the Cape Fear River. It was where Pip learned to chase a ball without flinching at every loud noise. It was also where we met Rook. Rook was a boisterous, perpetually optimistic beagle who seemed to believe the world was one giant, wonderful smell. Pip, initially terrified, was eventually won over by Rook's sheer, idiotic goodwill. Rook's leash was attached to Caleb Mercer. Caleb was 33, tall, with the rumpled, slightly distracted but present energy of someone who builds things. He was, I learned over the course of several leash-entangled introductions, the founder of a small, innovative startup that designed custom prosthetic limbs and rehab equipment using 3D printing. He was brilliant, and he had a quiet, genuine warmth that I found unsettlingly new. In Lakeport, men, my father, my relatives, talked at you. They talked about sports, or lawns, or they interrogated you. Caleb listened. "So, Aurelia MedTech," he said one afternoon, tossing a ball for Rook. "That's serious hardware. The Midwest division, right? What brought you to Redwood Ridge?" It was a simple, direct question. I felt the old reflex. Deflect, minimize, make a joke. "Oh, just needed a change of scenery." "A change of scenery is good," he said, watching Pip instead of me, which somehow made it easier to talk. "But a cross-country move like that? That's not changing the furniture. That's changing the foundations. Must have been a big decision." He wasn't digging, he wasn't prying, he was just observing, offering a space. "It was," I said, the word catching in my throat. "It was necessary." He nodded, accepting the answer as complete. He didn't push for the why, he didn't demand the backstory, he just let my answer be enough. We stood there for a minute, listening to the dogs panting and the river flowing past. It was the most comfortable silence I had ever shared with anyone. We started seeing each other. First, more accidental park run-ins, then coffee, then, a few weeks later, dinner. It was at a place called The Fork, a farm-to-table restaurant housed in a converted warehouse. It was all exposed brick, Edison bulbs, and food that tasted like the season. We were sharing a plate of something involving roasted beets and goat cheese, talking about his latest project, a lighter-weight prosthetic for a child amputee. My phone, which had been silent on the table, suddenly vibrated, the screen lighting up. The name on the screen was Mom. I froze. A jolt of pure, unadulterated adrenaline shot through me, cold and sharp. My stomach hollowed out. My breath hitched. It was the Pavlovian response of 1,000 emergencies. Sloan is in jail. Dad had a heart attack. The house burned down. This, I realized, was the anxiety I had lived with every single day. The what now? Caleb saw me stop mid-sentence. "Everything okay?" I looked at the buzzing phone, the insistent, demanding summons from my old life. I saw the old Marin, the one who would apologize, jump up, and spend the next 30 minutes in the alley, pacing, listening to a one-sided, hysterical conversation. The Marin who would let her own warm, wonderful dinner get cold while she was recruited to fix a problem 1,000 miles away. "It's an old reflex," I said, more to myself than to him. "I'm not following it anymore." I reached out, my hand steady. I pressed the power button once to silence the ring, and then I turned the phone over, screen down, on the dark wood of the table. I took a deep breath. "You were saying, the carbon fiber weave?" Caleb held my gaze. A small, understanding smile touched his lips. "Right," he said, and continued his story. It was a boundary, and I had just held it. The breach, however, had begun. I had severed the direct line, but the static was starting to leak through the cracks. The only relative I maintained contact with was my cousin, Mira. She was 22, my mother's sister's daughter, and she had the same get-me-out-of-the-Midwest gene I had. She was backpacking through Southeast Asia on a shoestring budget, a fact that horrified Elena and Gordon, but which I secretly funded whenever I could. She was passing back through the States and had detoured to see me. "This place is amazing, Marin," she'd said, flopping onto my new gray sofa. "It's so calm. It looks like you." She had snapped a picture of my living room, the sofa, my crowded bookshelf, the morning light hitting the fiddle-leaf fig I was managing to keep alive. She posted it on her private Instagram, which apparently half of my extended family followed. The caption was, "Chilling in Redwood Ridge at my cousin Marin's gorgeous new place. She's killing it." A week later, the text messages started, not from my immediate family, but from the periphery, an aunt from Ohio, a second cousin in Indiana. "Heard you moved, honey, so brave. Just wanted to see how you were, dear. We never hear from you. Your mom must miss you terribly." It was a sudden, coordinated blizzard of concern. It was transparent. They weren't interested in me. They were gathering intelligence for my mother. I gave them all polite, gray rock responses. "Thanks for thinking of me. Yes, the move went well. Work is good." Then, Mira sent me a screenshot. She was still on my side, my spy in the old world. "Figured you should see this," she texted. "It's from the extended Blake chat." The screenshot was a conversation. My Aunt Karen had posted Mira's photo of my living room. Aunt Karen: "Elena, look at this. Marin's new apartment is just beautiful. She must be doing so well for herself." Sloane replying instantly, "It looks expensive." Elena, my mother: "We don't know her situation. She doesn't talk to us." Sloane: "Mom, you need to find out. Just ask her about her finances. Ask her what she's making. With that promotion, she must have stock options or something. You need to ask her." I read the text, then I read it again. I felt the old chill, but it wasn't panic. It was the detached observation of a scientist. Ask about her finances, stock options. This wasn't about missing me. This wasn't concern. This was inventory. They were assessing my value. I looked at the message, the blunt, transactional nature of Sloane's demand. I felt nothing, not anger, not betrayal, just confirmation. The final confirmation that my leaving was not an escape. It was a survival imperative. My new habit of calm held. I was observing data, not reacting to an attack. The main assault came later. It was 10:30 on a Tuesday night. I was in bed, reading. Pip curled at my feet. My phone lit up. This time, I had forgotten to put it on silent. The buzz ding vibrated on the nightstand. "Mom, Marin, please pick up." "Mom, honey, it's important. We miss you so much." Sloane: "Marin, Mom is really upset. You should answer her." Dad: "Call your mother." Mom: "We just feel so awful that we haven't seen your new life. We are just so proud of you, and we miss you." The guilt, the united front, the sudden, overwhelming love that only ever appeared when they needed to manage me. "Mom, we're fixing it. We booked flights." My blood went cold. "Mom, we land in Redwood Ridge tomorrow at 10 a.m. All of us. The kids are so excited to see Auntie Marin." They were not asking. They were telling. They were invading. They were coming to the one place that was mine, bringing the chaos of Lakeport with them, and they hadn't even bothered with the courtesy of an invitation. My hands were shaking, not with fear, this time, but with a sudden, electric rage. My phone rang again. It was Caleb. I stared at it, then snatched it up. "Hey," he said, his voice instantly grounding. "You're still awake." "They're coming here," I said. My voice was tight, high. "My family. They booked flights. They land tomorrow. They didn't ask. Caleb, they're just coming." He was quiet for a beat. I could hear him exhale. He didn't offer advice. He didn't tell me I was overreacting. "Okay," he said, his voice solid. "So, what are the rules on your home court, Marin?" I stopped. Home court. He was right. This was not Lakeport. I was not the guest. I was not the stagehand. This was my apartment, my city, my life. I had been building boundaries for months. The muted chat, the flipped-over phone, the no to my mother. This was the final test. "You're right," I said, the shaking in my voice stopping. "This is my home court." I took a deep, steadying breath, the smell of the pine trees outside my window mixing with the scent of my own home. I would not meet them at the airport. I would not cancel my work. I would not let them turn my sanctuary into a war room. "They're not staying here," I said, thinking of Pip, of my calm, of my new, fragile peace. "I'll book them a hotel near the airport." And I decided, in that moment, that I would let them come, but they would be received on my terms, in my space, where I had the high ground. I would let them in, and I would finally, completely, set the terms of my own existence. I had booked their hotel, a Marriott, conveniently located near the airport and inconveniently located far from my apartment. I texted my mother the confirmation number and the hotel address. I told her I had a small window in my schedule and could see them at my apartment from 12 to 2. I took the morning off from work, logging the hours as personal time. It was not a vacation. It was a tactical preparation. I spent the morning fortifying my space. This was not the cleaning for company I had done my whole life, the frantic scrubbing born of my mother's anxieties. This was the opposite. This was organizing for combat. I put away the small, sentimental items I had collected since my arrival. I moved a fragile lamp from the end table to my bedroom. I made a pot of coffee, but only for myself. I took Pip to my neighbor's apartment, a kind woman who was happy to dog sit. My home, my sanctuary, was now a neutral meeting ground, stripped of any personal leverage. At 11:59, I stood by my front door, listening to the muffled sounds of the hallway. The knock came at exactly 12 o'clock. It was not a polite hello knock. It was a sharp, rapid, impatient rat-tat-tat-tat, Sloane's knock, a knock that demanded entry. I did not open the door. I closed my eyes. I centered myself. I took a deep, slow breath. I was in my home. I was not the responsible child in their chaotic house. I was the adult who paid the rent. I began an active, deliberate count. 1, 2, I am not their utility. 3, 4, they are guests here. 5, 6, I am in control of this door. 7, 8, I will not be rushed. 9, 10. My hand was perfectly steady as I turned the deadbolt. I opened the door. They were clustered in the hallway, a messy, agitated clump of Midwestern anxiety. They looked rumpled and cross from the flight and the inevitable argument in the rental car. My mother, Elena, saw me and surged forward first. Her face was a mask of practiced, aggrieved love. "Oh, Marin, honey!" Her arms enveloped me in a crushing, theatrical hug. It was not a hug of affection. It was a hug of possession, of restaking a claim. It smelled of stale airplane air, expensive hairspray, and the faint, acidic tang of her stress. Over her shoulder, I watched my father. "Gordon," he grunted. "Morning, Marin," and shouldered past both of us. He did not make eye contact. His gaze was already sweeping the living room, hunting. "Where's the remote for this thing? They said the game was on." Sloane entered last, her 2 children, 7 and 5, flanking her like a small, restless entourage. She pushed her sunglasses on top of her head and performed a slow, critical scan of my apartment. Her eyes moved from the sofa to the bookshelf to the kitchen. "Wow," she said, her voice thin. "It is nice. Very compact." It was the kind of compliment that was designed to be an insult. The children, Leo and Juniper, released from the confines of the car and the airplane, immediately exploded, like tiny agents of chaos. They sprinted into the new territory. Leo made a running leap onto my new gray sofa, his dusty sneakers skidding across the cushions. Juniper, instantly drawn to the lowest, most accessible target, ran to my bookshelf and wrapped her sticky hands around a small glass figurine I'd bought at a local market. "Leo, feet off the couch, please." My voice was quiet. It was not a request. It was an instruction. It cut through the noise with an unfamiliar authority. Leo, surprised at being addressed by the background aunt, paused. Juniper, put that down. That is not a toy. Sloane let out a high, nervous laugh, the one she used to dismiss any inconvenient rules. Oh, Marin, let them be. They're just excited. You know how kids are. They've been cooped up for hours. I know, I said, my voice still perfectly level. I walked over and gently, but firmly, uncurled Juniper's fingers from the glass bird. I placed it back on the shelf. I then bent slightly at the knees, bringing myself to their eye level. I looked at both of them, not Sloane. Hi, guys. I am very happy to see you. But in my house, we have a rule. We do not touch things that are not ours, and we do not put our feet on the furniture. Sloane's face tightened. I had just contradicted her, the mother, in front of her children. I turned to my father, who was now frowning at my modest, 32-inch television as if it had personally offended him. Dad, I said, the remote is on the side table, but it's staying off for now. We're here to talk. He looked genuinely baffled, as if I had just suggested we all start speaking French. He was an audience of one, and his preferred programming had been denied. He slumped onto the sofa, crossing his arms, a picture of put-upon fatherhood. My mother, having released me from her grip, was now conducting her own inspection. She drifted into the small, galley-style kitchen. She ran a single, judgmental finger along the quartz countertop. It was a standard rental-grade finish, but in her eyes, it was a symbol of gross extravagance. "My goodness, Marin," she said, her voice heavy with implication. "This is all a bit luxurious, isn't it? This kitchen is almost bigger than ours." It was not. It was simply newer, and it had not been subjected to 35 years of her. "It's a standard apartment, Mom. It's nice." "I'll say," Sloane interjected. Seeing her opening, she sat down on the edge of my armchair, perching like a bird of prey. She leaned forward, clasping her hands, and deployed a tone of bright, casual, sisterly interest. It was far more alarming than her usual volume. "So, that promotion, that must be amazing. Are you salaried or hourly now? Did they give you RSUs? Aurelia MedTech is public, isn't it? I bet the stock options are just incredible." The questions came like bullets from a machine gun, a financial interrogation disguised as a catch-up. "What's your base pay now? I bet it's over 6 figures, easily. Are you maxing out your 401k? Is this a mortgage, or are you just renting? I heard the interest rates in this state are terrible. What did you have to put down? 20%? This was not a conversation. It was a deposition. They were here to assess the value of their new asset. I let her flurry of questions hang in the air, a cloud of frantic, buzzing insects. I refused to swat at them. I walked to my fridge, poured myself a glass of cold water from the pitcher, and took a slow, deliberate sip. The ice cubes clinked against the glass. The silence stretched, amplifying her invasive, grasping words. "Sloane," I said finally, "that's my private financial information." "What?" she laughed, the sound brittle. "I'm just asking. It's not a secret. We're family. Families talk about these things." "My compensation is competitive," I said, using the bland, corporate language I knew would infuriate her. "And the benefits are good. I'm very happy with the package." I offered no numbers, no percentages, no dollar signs. I gave them no foothold. Sloane's mouth thinned into a pale, angry line. This was not the script she had practiced in the car. I had denied her the data she needed for her calculation. Before she could regroup, I pivoted. I turned to my father, who was still sulking on the sofa, pointedly staring at the blank television screen. "Dad," I said, "how is the high school team looking this season? Did they finally find a decent quarterback to replace that kid who graduated last spring?" His eyes lit up, a switch being flipped. He sat forward instantly. "Oh, he's a disaster, a total disaster. His footwork is all over the place, no pocket awareness at all, and the offensive line." As he launched into a detailed, 5-minute breakdown of the team's defensive weaknesses, I watched Sloane. Her entire body vibrated with a contained, silent fury. Her interrogation had been expertly derailed. The conversational control handed to my father's most boring, predictable monologue. She was furious, and I felt a small, cold spark of satisfaction. The children, having been forgotten during the financial probe, had grown restless. Leo, in a bid to get his mother's attention back, began jumping from the armchair to the sofa, using the armrest as a launch pad. "Leo, I told you," Sloane snapped, her irritation finding its usual target. "Stop it." He ignored her, energized by the drama. On his third jump, his elbow caught the edge of a small side table, a slim ceramic vase, a $5 find from the farmer's market, wobbled, tipped, and fell to the hardwood floor with a dull, heavy thud. Sloane exploded. "Leo, my God, look what you did! You broke Auntie Marin's expensive things. That's it. We're leaving." Leo, more from the shock of his mother's shriek than from any actual remorse, instantly burst into tears. "It's fine," I said, my voice cutting cleanly through the noise. The vase wasn't even chipped. "Sloane, yelling won't fix it." I picked up the vase and placed it on the kitchen counter. Out of reach. I went to my bookshelf. From the bottom shelf, I pulled out 2 items I had purchased yesterday, a stack of coloring books and a brand new 64-pack of crayons. "Leo, Juniper," I said, placing the items on my sturdy wooden coffee table. They both looked up, their tears and boredom momentarily forgotten. "The new rule is the quiet time rule. You can sit here and color, or you can sit on the sofa and read these picture books, but the running and the jumping are finished." They stared at me, then at the sharp, pristine crayons. They sat down on the floor and, in total silence, began to color. I had restored order in less than 30 seconds, without a single raised voice. I stood up and looked at my mother. Elena was watching me, her head tilted, an expression of profound, baffled confusion on her face. Her grandchild had been disciplined without screaming. Her husband had been denied his football. Her daughter's invasive questions had been deflected. The entire dynamic of her world, the one she so carefully and loudly managed, had been inverted. "You've changed, Marin," she said. The words were quiet. A flat observation. It was an accusation. "Yes," I said. "I have—" That was it. The admission. I was no longer the person she recognized. I was no longer her compliant appliance, the silent stagehand, the free babysitter. My mother's gaze flickered, moving from me to Sloane. It was a quick, sharp look, a signal I had seen 1,000 times. It meant, the soft approach has failed. The interrogation has failed. Proceed to the main event. Sloane took a deep, shaky breath, summoning the performance. This was it. This was the reason for the 1,000-mile flight. "Marin," she began, her voice suddenly fragile, watery, the voice she used when she needed to mask a demand as a desperate plea. We didn't just come here to see the apartment." I did not respond. I did not offer her an emotional foothold. I just stood there, my glass of water in my hand, and I waited. "It's the boutique," she said, looking down at her hands, which were twisting in her lap. It's not good. The holiday sales. They just didn't happen. My main supplier went bankrupt, and I had all these pre-orders I couldn't fill, and now they all want refunds." My mother, on cue, placed a hand on her arm. "It's not her fault, honey. It's this economy. No one is supporting small businesses." "I'm in trouble, Marin," Sloane said, her voice cracking, a single tear beginning to trace a path down her cheek. "Real trouble. I'm about $39,000 in debt. The creditors are calling. They're talking about putting a lien on the house." The number hung in the air. $39,000. My silence unnerved them. They were expecting an immediate, emotional reaction. An "Oh, Sloane, no," or an "I'm so sorry, what can I do?" My mother filled the void, her voice laced with a false, neighborly casualness. We were thinking, honey, this place. She gestured around my small, rented apartment, which had instantly transformed in her mind from an extravagant luxury to a disposable asset. It's just lovely, of course, but you're just one person. All this space, just for you. And we're a family. Sloane looked up, her eyes bright with desperate, calculated tears, the final, outrageous pitch. We need you to help us. Marin, she whispered. We need you to sell this place. Just sell it. It would cover the debt. And you could move back home. You could move back in with me, or with Mom and Dad. We can all be together again. It would be so much better for everyone. Sell this place, my apartment, the one I was renting, the one they had just learned existed 48 hours ago. They didn't even know if I owned it or not. The sheer, staggering, monumental arrogance of it left me breathless. They hadn't come to visit. They had come to liquidate me. I just stared at them. I held my glass of water, the condensation cold against my palm. The audacity of the request was so vast, so complete, that it circled past anger and landed somewhere near clinical fascination. Sell this place, my rented apartment. They had built an entire narrative of my wealth in their minds, a narrative that had me owning prime real estate I had inhabited for less than 6 months. My silence, which was the silence of pure, dumbfounded shock, was immediately misinterpreted. They saw it as a starting point for negotiation. They saw it as the first crack in the dam. The music began, the familiar, mournful, 4-part symphony of a Blake family guilt trip. My mother, Elena, was the string section, swelling with aggrieved emotion. She put her arm around Sloane, who had resumed her performative, dry-eyed sobbing. Oh, honey, don't, Mom murmured, stroking Sloane's hair. Marin knows. She knows it's for the children. Juniper. She talks about her cousins in Lakeport all the time. She feels so left out. And Leo. He needs stability. Marin. He needs his family around him. These children. They are the innocent ones here. It's for them. Sloane, on cue, provided the woodwinds, a high, keening wail of personal suffering. I'm not sleeping, she whispered, her voice conveniently hoarse. I'm serious. I haven't slept in 3 weeks. I sit at the kitchen table at 3 a.m, and I stare at the ceiling. I can't breathe. My hair is actually falling out. Do you see this? She grabbed a limp strand, as if to offer it as evidence. I am 34 years old, and I am disintegrating. I'm a terrible mother. The kids deserve better. My mother picked up the refrain, adding a darker orchestral layer. And us, Marin, your father and I, we are getting old. We're not young. We can't handle this kind of stress. Night after night, listening to your sister cry, worrying about Lean's, your father's blood pressure, the doctor said. Well, it's just not good. This stress, it could kill him. Then came the final, low note, the tuba. My father, Gordon, who had been silent, stewing in his football-less rage, finally spoke. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and fixed me with a look of profound paternal disappointment. And this new fella you're with, he said, his voice a low growl. Caleb, the startup guy. Your mother told me. He's got that prosthetics business. That's big money. He's got that son, right? I flinched. Son? You don't need 2 houses, he continued, ignoring my confusion. You're living in this fancy place, and he's got his place. He's got money. He's got a son. It's not like you're alone anymore. You don't need all this. It's just selfish. Marin, when your own sister, your own flesh and blood, is suffering. It was a stunning, breathtaking move, a tactical masterpiece of misinformation. Caleb doesn't have a son. Rook, his beagle, was the only one he shared his life with. They had been to my apartment once, seen a dog leash by the door, And in the convoluted, desperate investigation they had conducted, they had twisted a dog into a child into a stepchild, and a new relationship into a financial merger that rendered my own assets unnecessary. It was in that moment that I realized the full, terrifying scope of what had happened. They had been here for less than an hour, 60 minutes. In that time, they had assessed my apartment, inventoried my kitchen, interrogated me on my salary, my stock options, and my 401k. They had scouted my new relationship, misidentified the key players, and constructed an entire financial and familial narrative that positioned me as a wealthy, selfish hoarder of resources. The concerned texts from Aunt Karen, the just checking in from my Ohio cousin, it wasn't concern, it was reconnaissance. They had been building a case against me for weeks, and the entire time, not one of them had asked me a single, genuine question about my new life. Not, "Are you happy?" Not, "What is your new office like?" Not, "What do you see from your balcony?" I was not a daughter, I was not a sister, I was an untapped credit line. The memory of Christmas, just a few months prior, flashed in my mind. The dead, annihilating silence after I announced my promotion, the absolute vacuum of interest, the memory of my call to my mother, telling her I was moving. "But you didn't ask us." They had ignored the news of my success until they could figure out how to spend it. They had ignored my departure until they needed me to come back and fix their problems. My entire existence was a line item, invisible until it was time to be audited. Sloane, sensing my analytical silence, mistook it for the old, familiar weakness. She saw the calculating look in my eyes and thought it was capitulation. She thought I was mentally moving money. She surged forward, breaking from my mother's embrace, her eyes dry now, her voice shifting from desperate to closing the deal. "It's not even a big deal. Marin," she said, her voice suddenly casual, conspiratorial. "It's just money. It's paper. We're family. And I will absolutely pay you back. 100%. The minute the boutique turns around next quarter. This is just a temporary, a cash flow thing. You know business. You'll get it all back." She smiled, a bright, confident, predatory smile. She had me, the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who always fixed it. I looked at her. I looked at my mother, who was nodding encouragingly, a proud stage mom watching her star. I looked at my father, who was already mentally spending my non-existent real estate equity. I took a slow sip of my water. The ice cubes clinked. It was the only sound in the room, besides the quiet scratching of crayons from the children on the floor, who were blissfully unaware of the attempted heist. "No," I said. It was not the word they were expecting, but it was not the word I meant to say. The word I meant to say, the word that was part of my old programming, was okay, but no came out. And then, to soften the blow I had just accidentally dealt, my brain supplied the old buffer, the familiar delay tactic. "I mean, I'll think about it," I said. The shift in the room was instantaneous. It was as if I had pulled the pin on a grenade. Sloane's smile evaporated. My mother's face went from soft encouragement to hard, cold stone. My father's jaw tightened. "I'll think about it" was not, "yes." It was not, "How can I help?" It was, in the Blake family language, a declaration of war. It was the first crack in their united front. My mother, Elena, was the first to recover. Her shock hardened, instantly, into righteous, molten rage. She was the one who had sacrificed. She was the one who was owed. "Think about it?" she repeated, her voice low and dangerous, all the false, teary sympathy gone. "Think about it? Marin, after everything we have done for you? Everything?" She was on her feet now, her hands clenched at her sides. She began to pace my small living room, a prosecutor listing her grievances to a hostile jury. "Who do you think paid for that expensive art camp when you were 13? The one you begged to go to? Your father and I. We went without a vacation for 2 years for that." I remembered that camp. I had won a 75% scholarship. They had paid for the bus ticket and the art supplies. Who do you think drove you to every single one of those absurd debate tournaments, all over the state? Me. I sat in those cold gymnasiums for hours. Hours I could have been spending with my other daughter. I remembered her sitting in the back row, not listening, but grading Sloane's late-term papers, the red pen moving angrily. We sacrificed, Marin, we sacrificed so you could go to that good college, so you could get this job, so you could have all of this. She gestured wildly around the room, at my rented, standard-issue apartment, as if it were a palace I had built from the bones of her own happiness. This quartz, this luxury. And now, when your family, your blood, is in trouble, you have to think about it? She was magnificent, a true artist of selective memory and transactional guilt. I stood up. I placed my empty glass in the sink. The sound of the glass on the stainless steel was sharp, final. "My 2 hours are up," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I used at Aurelia MedTech when a meeting had run over and I had a hard stop. "What?" my mother sputtered, halting her tirade mid-stride. "My scheduled time for this visit, it was from 12 to 2. It is now 2:01. I have a client call at 2:30 that I need to prepare for." I walked to the front door and opened it. The quiet, carpeted hallway of my apartment building was visible. They just stared at me, all three of them. They were frozen. This was not in the script. I was not supposed to be the one to end the meeting. I was supposed to be weeping, checkbook in hand. "I understand you've said what you came to say," I continued, holding the door open. "And I've given you my answer. I will think about it. You have my number. It was good to see you. Kids," I called over my shoulder. "Time to go." Sloane scrambled to her feet, her face pale, a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. She grabbed the crayons from her son's hand, causing him to wail. Fine, get your shoes on. We're leaving this place." My father stood, jamming his hands into his pockets, his face dark. He shoulder-checked the doorframe as he left, a final, petty act of physical displeasure. My mother, her face a rigid mask, herded the crying children into the hall. Sloane was the last to leave. She paused in the doorway, her eyes narrowing to slits. "You're going to regret this. Marin, you're choosing this." She gestured to my apartment. "Over your family." "I'm choosing to think," I said. "Have a safe flight." I closed the door. I turned the deadbolt. The click of the lock sliding into place was the loudest, most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The blank television screen stared back at me. The children's coloring books were open on the coffee table. The apartment was utterly, profoundly silent. I stood in the middle of the room. I waited for the crash, the adrenaline dump, the nausea, the overwhelming, crushing guilt that always followed a confrontation with them. I waited for the voice in my head to scream at me, to tell me I was a terrible daughter, a bad sister. I waited. Nothing. I felt quiet. I put my hand to my wrist, my fingers searching for my pulse. It was steady. It was not racing. It was not thudding in my ears. For the first time in my memory, a confrontation with my family had not sent my body into a state of physiological panic. The silence was just silence. It was not abandonment. It was peace. The barrage, of course, began the next morning. It was a digital carpet bombing. A text from Mom. "I am just sick. I am physically sick with disappointment. I lay awake all night. I don't know the person you have become. Your father is beside himself." A text from Sloane. "I hope you're happy. I hope you and your fake new life and your stupid quartz counters keep you warm at night. You are actively destroying this family. You are killing me. I will never forgive you for this." A text from Dad. "Your mother is very upset." And then, the flying monkeys, released from their cages. A text from Aunt Karen. "Honey, just heard what happened. I'm just so worried about your mother. Please, whatever it is, just do the right thing. Family is the only thing we have." I looked at the glowing screen. I saw the web of manipulation, the coordinated attack, the interlocking levers of guilt and shame. I took a deep breath. I typed a single, identical response to each one of them. To my mother, to my sister, to my father, to my aunt. I am at work. I will not be discussing my personal finances. I blocked Aunt Karen. Then I put my phone on Do Not Disturb and went to my laptop. I did not open my work email. I did not open my bank accounts. I opened a new, blank browser window. My fingers, steady and sure, typed in a name. Lila Haynes, Esquire, Redwood Ridge Family Law. I had gotten the referral from a senior colleague at Aurelia MedTech, a woman who had been through a notoriously difficult corporate divorce. I clicked Contact. I wrote a short, clear email. Dear Ms. Haynes, my name is Marin Blake. I was referred to you by my colleague. I need to schedule a consultation at your earliest convenience. I require legal advice regarding family financial agreements, asset protection, and the establishment of formal, binding boundaries. I hit Send. I opened a second tab. Juneau Park, Redwood Ridge Financial Planning. Dear Mr. Park, I typed. I am a new resident in Redwood Ridge, and I am seeking a new financial advisor. I need to structure my assets in a way that protects my long-term portfolio from high-risk, external, and non-reciprocal demands. I would like to schedule an introductory meeting. I hit Send. They thought they had come to my home to present an ultimatum. They had no idea that they had. Instead, just given me my opening argument, I was done being the asset. I was done being the stagehand. They wanted to talk about money. Fine. I was going to change the entire game. And this time, I was coming with a lawyer. Lila Haynes's office was not the warm, mahogany-paneled den of a comforting family advisor. It was on the 19th floor, encased in glass and steel, with a severe minimalist view of the Redwood Ridge skyline. Lila herself was an extension of the architecture, sharp, precise, and dressed in a graphite gray suit that looked like it had been custom milled. She did not offer coffee. She did not ask me how I was feeling. She got straight to the point. Let's be clear, Ms. Blake, she said, her voice crisp. She was tapping a stylus against a tablet. You are not in a family dispute. You are in a hostile negotiation with a high-risk, unsecured debtor. Your family is attempting to leverage a non-binding emotional contract to solve a $39,000 cash flow crisis. I sat across from her, my hands folded on the cold glass table. They call it helping. I call it predatory lending, in reverse, she countered, not looking up. They are asking you to be their emotional and financial guarantor. The risks are profound. You co-sign once. You are on the hook for every bad inventory decision, every late payment, every future crisis for the rest of your life. They will see you as a solution, not a person. My job is to make you a person again, a person with very, very good boundaries. I had come to her expecting advice. She was, instead, offering a tactical strategy. They won't listen to a no, I said. It's not a word they understand. They will, Lila said. When it is written on legal letterhead, we will not give them a no. We will give them a yes, if, and we will make the if so objectively reasonable that their refusal to comply will expose their true intentions. That was when she architected the plan. It was not a letter. It was a structure. She called it the Blake Boundary Trust. You will never again send your sister $1, she instructed. Any potential, theoretical, future aid will be funded into this trust. I will be the trustee. All communication regarding money will go through me. You are removed from the emotional equation. I become the bad guy. The trust was a masterpiece of corporate-level accountability, applied to a dysfunctional family. Lila drafted the core conditions for any disbursement. Condition 1, she dictated, is full financial transparency. Sloan Blake will provide the trust with complete, unredacted access to the boutique's finances for the preceding 24 months. Every bank statement, every credit card statement, every vendor invoice, every single sales ledger. She will never do that, I said immediately. Then the trust remains unfunded, Lyra said flatly. That is the point. Condition 2. She must agree to a full, independent, third-party audit of her business. We need to know where every dollar of that $39,000 went. If she refuses the audit, the negotiation ends. The list grew. Each condition was a steel bar in the cage we were building. Condition 3. A formal business restructuring plan, based on the audit's findings. Condition 4. Sloane Blake must enroll in and provide a certificate of completion for a small business financial management course from an accredited institution. She must learn what cash flow actually means. Then, I added my own. This isn't just about money, Ms. Haynes. It's the behavior, the demands, the insults, the way they talk to me. Ah, Lyra said, a thin, satisfied smile touching her lips. The restoration of respect clause, my favorite. She drafted it. It was beautiful. This clause stipulates that any and all communication regarding this matter must be conducted professionally and respectfully, in writing. Any attempt to circumvent the trust, any abusive text messages, any late-night, guilt-tripping phone calls, any unsolicited demands made to Ms. Blake directly, any verbal or emotional abuse, will be logged as a breach of contract. And the consequence? A first breach, Lyra said, triggers an immediate 90-day freeze on all considerations. A second breach terminates the trust and any potential for aid permanently. No appeals. They will have to sign it, all three of them. They will paint me as the villain, I said, the old familiar knot tightening in my stomach. Of course they will, Lyra said, looking at me directly for the first time. Which is why you, Ms. Blake, need to stop acting like the victim and start acting like the prosecution. You need evidence. I spent the next 3 days in a digital archaeological dig of my own life. I did not just archive the recent, abusive texts. I went back years. I screenshot the endless, one-sided conversations. My text. Just letting you know, I finished my final exams, followed by a read receipt. 6 hours later, Sloane's reply. Can you pick up Leo from daycare? I have a thing. I found the text from my graduation day, the one I sent to my mother. In my cap and gown, getting ready to line up. Her reply, an hour later. Your sister's having a meltdown. We might be late. Try to save us seats. I unearthed the voicemails, which, under the one-party consent laws of my new, fictional state, were perfectly legal to archive. I sat in my quiet, sunlit apartment and listened to the ghosts of my past. I listened to Sloane, screaming that I had ruined Christmas because I'd bought the wrong brand of evaporated milk. I listened to my mother, weeping, telling me I was selfish and ungrateful for taking a promotion that required me to work on the weekend of her garden club's annual picnic. I saved every file. I organized them by date and by person. It was an affidavit of my own invisibility, a catalog of transactional relationships. I was not building a case against them. I was building a case for myself. My next meeting was with Juno Park, my new financial advisor. Juno was the warm, empathetic counterpart to Lyra's Steele. His office was filled with thriving plants, and he offered me jasmine tea, but his data was just as brutal. I ran the models. Marin, he said, his voice gentle. He turned his large monitor toward me. It was covered in graphs. This is your current portfolio, he said, pointing to a healthy, upward-trending line. This is your retirement projection. You are on track to be secure by 60, maybe 55. He clicked a key. A new, terrifying line appeared, branching off the first and plummeting. This is your portfolio if you grant an unconditional the $39,000 family loan. We call this Bailout 1. Your retirement clock is pushed back 8 years. Your ability to buy a home, gone for the next decade. But she said she'd pay me back, I whispered. The data model assumes she will not, Juno said kindly, but it also predicts something far worse. Bailout 2, which will occur in approximately 18 months when this crisis repeats, and Bailout 3 after that. If you become the unsecured bank for a high-risk entity, which is what your sister's boutique is, you will be financially and emotionally bankrupt within 24 months. You will be underwriting her failure with your future. We cannot allow that. He was the financial equivalent of a doctor giving a terminal diagnosis. So what do I do, Juno? Lyra's plan is severe. It's brilliant, he corrected me. But it's one tool. We need a full strategy. I've broken this down into 3 executable plans. Plan A, the unconditional bailout. This is what your family wants. This is financial suicide. We are not doing this. Plan B, the hard boundary, 0 financial assistance. You provide them with referrals to public resources, debt consolidation services, bankruptcy attorneys, nonprofit credit counselors. You offer sympathy, but not a cent. This is the cleanest option for your portfolio. Plan C, the conditional investment, he said, tapping the screen. This is Lyra's trust, but we are not giving them $39,000. We are offering, perhaps, a small, $5,000 microloan, released only after the audit is complete, the business class is passed, and the restructuring plan is approved. A second, smaller loan may follow 6 months later, if and only if she can provide certified proof of revenue and adherence to the plan. I looked at the 3 plans. Plan B was the clean break. It was the no I had been trying to say, but it felt incomplete. It didn't solve the core problem. The core problem was not the debt. It was the disrespect. This isn't just about her money, I said, thinking aloud. This is about my value. They see me as an appliance. Plan B just means the appliance is broken. Plan C. Plan C forces them to read the instruction manual for the first time. I took a deep breath. I choose Plan C, but I am adding one more condition. I thought of the slap. I thought of my father's 3 words. Hagyong-sung, lower your voice. Before I even offer them Plan C, I said to Juno, before the trust is even mentioned, they have to sign an addendum, a formal written apology, all 3 of them, an apology for the documented history of verbal abuse, for the years of dismissal, and for the financial ambush at my apartment. They must acknowledge what they did. Without that, there is no deal. There is nothing. Juno looked at me, a long, appraising look. That is a very high bar. Marin. That's the point, I said. The price of admission to my life just went up. I had my lawyer, I had my financial advisor, I had my evidence, I had my plan. For 2 weeks, I let my family's hysterical, abusive, and guilt-ridden texts and voicemails bounce off my do not disturb shield. I let them rage into the void. Then, when the silence from my end had become deafening, I sent a single, calm, group text to my mother, my father, and Sloane. Thank you for giving me the time to think. As I said I would, I have analyzed the situation and I have formulated a proposal that I believe can resolve Sloane's financial issues in a structured way. I will be flying home to Lakeport for Christmas. I would like to treat everyone to a reconciliation dinner at the house on Christmas Eve. We can discuss my proposal then. I look forward to resolving this as a family. The reply from my mother was almost instantaneous, a burst of digital sunshine. Oh, Marin, yes, that is wonderful news. We knew you would do the right thing. We are so proud of you. Honey, we cannot wait to have you home. This is the best Christmas ever. They read proposal and heard check. They read reconciliation and heard surrender. They thought I was coming home to capitulate. They had no idea I was coming home to litigate. That night, I told Caleb. We were at my apartment, making dinner. Pip was snoring at our feet. Christmas Eve, he said, pausing his chopping. That's the big leagues. Marin, you're walking right into the lion's den. It's their home court, I said, stirring the sauce. But this time, I'm bringing my own rule book. He was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Do you want me to come with you? He asked, his voice low. I can just be there. I can fly to Lakeport. I don't have to say anything. I can just be a presence, a buffer. The generosity of the offer stole my breath. He was offering to put himself between me and them. He was offering me a shield. The old Marin, the invisible daughter, would have grabbed onto him like a life raft. She would have hidden behind his solid, capable presence. I stopped stirring. I turned off the heat. I reached out and put my hand on his arm, feeling the warmth of him. "No," I said. My voice was soft, but it was the steadiest it had ever been. He looked surprised. "Thank you, Caleb. That's the kindest offer I've ever had. But this is the one thing I have to do alone. For 31 years, I've been the quiet one. I've let their noise drown me out. This time, I have to be the one to speak my own voice." He held my gaze, and I saw a flicker of something new. Not just affection, but profound respect. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "Then go speak it. I'll have my phone on all night." The moment I stepped out of the rental car onto the familiar salted walkway of my parents' house in Lakeport, the performance began. The house was aggressively festive, a visual shout of tradition and normalcy. Every window was framed in cheerful, warm yellow lights, a massive, perfect wreath, identical to the one from last year and the year before, hung on the door. The air inside was thick, a pressurized wave of heat and scent. It was the smell of my childhood holidays, the sharp, sweet tang of simmering cider, the warm dust of cinnamon and clove, the resinous pine of the oversized tree. It was the smell of obligation. The kitchen, my old post, was a furnace. My mother was basting, her face flushed from the oven's heat, and there it was, sitting on the counter in its roasting pan, a prop waiting for its cue, the Christmas ham. It glistened under the kitchen lights, a massive, fatty, artery-clogging monument to the holiday. It was the same ham, in the same pan, on the same counter. I was the only variable that had changed. "Marin, you're here!" My mother, Elena, rushed over, wiping her hands on an apron. Her hug was quick, brittle, and public. She was performing for the audience already gathering. "You look thin, honey. The Carolinas aren't feeding you." The first wave of relatives began to arrive, and with them, the chorus, Aunt Karen, her coat still on, pulled me into a cloud of perfume and concern. "Marin, dear," she whispered, squeezing my arm. "I am just so glad you're home. Just make it easy, honey, for your mother. Family is the only thing that matters. It's Christmas. Just smooth it over." "Yes," I said. "Thank you for the advice, Aunt Karen." My second cousin, the one from Indiana, cornered me by the snack table. "Listen, Marin, I hear Sloan is in a rough patch. We've all been there, but you're the one who got out. Did well, you know. You gotta look out for the ones who didn't. Just do the right thing. Keep the peace at home." I smiled, my face feeling like a mask I had just put on. "I appreciate you sharing your perspective." I saw Sloan across the room. She was not the loud, boisterous, ring light-wielding woman from her boutique live streams. She was engaged in a masterful performance of fragility. She was pale, wearing a loose-fitting beige sweater that made her look smaller. She was holding Juniper on her hip, not as a mother, but as a shield. She looked exhausted, defeated, and profoundly, beautifully pitiable. She caught my eye from across the room, and her gaze was a heavy, silent plea. Later, as I was getting a glass of water, she intercepted me, her voice a low, desperate whisper that no one else could hear. "Thank you for coming. Marin, I'm so scared. It's for the kids. I can't lose the house. Please." My mother found me as I was staring at the tree. The living room was suffocatingly warm, every surface draped in tinsel or garland. She stood next to me, smiling brightly as my uncle walked past, before her voice dropped to a low, urgent command. "Marin," she said, her fingers gripping my elbow with a strength that belied her smile. "I am so glad you came to your senses. We were all so worried. Now, today is a happy day. It is Christmas Eve. Do not make this hard. No one needs a big, dramatic scene. You have your proposal. You just give it to her, and we can all enjoy the holiday. Am I understood? Don't you dare ruin this. I have no intention of ruining anything, I said, gently detaching my arm from her grip. I'm just here to resolve things, like I said. Good, she nodded, her brittle hostess smile snapping back into place. And in the center of it all, the eye of the storm, was my father. Gordon was exactly where I knew he would be, in his deep, worn, leather recliner, enthroned. The 72-inch television was on, roaring at a volume that forced the rest of the house to shout over it, a pre-game analysis show. He was busy, absorbed, a man focused on important things. "Hey, Dad," I said, standing in his line of sight. "Marin," he grunted, his eyes not leaving the screen, but I saw them. I saw his gaze flick, for just 1/10 of a second, away from the analyst and toward me, then a quick, almost invisible flick over to Sloane, who was looking pale on the sofa, then to my mother, who was bustling by with a tray of appetizers. His eyes returned to the screen. He hadn't moved a muscle, but he was tracking every piece on the board. He was deeply, profoundly, and silently invested in the outcome of this tension. He wasn't just watching football. He was waiting for the financial report. I had arrived with my small, overnight bag and my briefcase. From the briefcase, I had taken a single item. It was a large, flat, rectangular box, the size of a legal document holder. I had wrapped it myself in simple, matte black paper and tied it with a single, elegant, cream-colored ribbon. It was an object of severe, corporate beauty, and it looked alien and stark against the explosion of glittery, cartoon Santa-covered gifts spilling from under the tree. I walked over to the tree, the scent of pine needles sharp and real. I bent down and slid the flat black box into the shadows at the very back, partially hidden behind a garish, oversized stocking. My mother saw the action. Sloane saw it. My father, from his recliner, saw it. It was a check being placed on the table in the first act. "Dinner!" my mother finally called, her voice high and strained with forced cheer. "Everyone, to the table! It's all ready!" There was the familiar chaotic scrape of chairs on the hardwood floor, the sounds of a dozen conversations, the clink of ice in glasses, the thud of wine bottles on coasters, the sharp, rhythmic clatter of silverware as my mother and aunts brought in the heavy platters. The air was full of noise, but underneath it, there was a single, humming, electrical wire of tension. We sat, my father at the head of the table, my mother at the foot, Sloane and her family on one side, I was on the other, wedged between Aunt Karen and an uncle I barely knew. The food was passed, the ham, the sweet potatoes, the green bean casserole. The sounds of serving spoons on porcelain created the beat. Scrape, clink, pass. And then, the noise subsided. People had their food. The room fell into that brief, expectant pause before the first bites are taken. It was a void, and it was a void I was expected to fill. Aunt Karen turned to me, her smile painfully bright. "So, Marin, your mother says you've come home with a wonderful Christmas solution for everyone." Every conversation at the table stopped. Every fork was poised. Every eye, my mother's, my father's, my uncle's, Sloane's, snapped to me. This was it. This was the moment of my public, holiday-themed surrender. They were all waiting, breathless, for the promise. They were waiting for me to stand up, raise my glass, and announce, "It's all taken care of. I've transferred the money. Merry Christmas." They were waiting for me to save Sloane, to placate my mother, to get my father's approval, and to restore the family's peace, all at my own expense. Sloane was looking at her plate, her lip trembling, a perfect portrait of a woman waiting for salvation. My mother was smiling at me, a tight, fixed, warning smile. "Do it. Do it now. Don't make a scene." I looked around the table. I saw the faces, the expectation, the web of unspoken contracts and emotional debts. I picked up my linen napkin, unfolded it, and placed it gently in my lap. I met my mother's gaze. I met my father's. I met Sloane's. I smiled. It was not a smile of capitulation. It was not a smile of warmth. It was the calm, neutral, pleasant smile of a senior product liaison about to begin a major presentation. "Yes, I do," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the thick, expectant air. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "I have a gift for the whole family." I let the silence at the table stretch, letting their anticipation build and curdle. My mother's warning smile was frozen on her face, the muscles around her mouth beginning to twitch with impatience. Sloane was vibrating, her eyes fixed on me, a picture of desperate, entitled hope. "I'll be right back," I said, my voice pleasant. I pushed my chair back. The sound of the wood scraping against the floor was unnaturally loud, a formal interruption of the holiday noise. I walked from the dining room, through the living room, past my father's empty, still blaring recliner, to the Christmas tree. I knelt, reached into the deep shadows under the lowest branches, and retrieved the flat, black-wrapped package. I returned to the table. I placed the object in the center, on the lace runner, next to the bowl of cranberry sauce. It looked like a void on the festive table. "As I said, I have a gift," I continued, my voice at a calm, conversational level. "It's a proposal for a new way forward, for all of us." I did not rip the paper. I carefully untied the single, cream-colored ribbon and set it aside. I folded the black paper back. I slid the contents out. It was not a check. It was not a holiday card. It was a document, approximately 20 pages long, bound in a professional, navy blue cover. The title, embossed in simple gold lettering on the front, was The Blake Boundary Agreement. I slid it across the table so it stopped directly in front of my father, at the head. "What is this?" my mother snapped, her patience gone. "Marin, what did you do?" "It's my proposal," I said, as if I were in a boardroom. "I had it drafted by my legal counsel. It's a formal trust agreement that outlines a specific, conditional, and structured path for me to potentially offer limited financial support to Sloane. I would recommend everyone read it very carefully before you react." My father, his curiosity piqued, pulled the document closer and opened it to the first page. Sloane looked utterly baffled. "Legal counsel? A trust? Marin, what are you talking about? I just need help." "I know," I said, "and this is what help now looks like. The agreement is based on 5 primary conditions." I held up my hand, my fingers spread, and began to tick them off, my voice calm and steady. Condition 1. The restoration of respect. This is the non-negotiable prerequisite, and it must be met before anything else is even discussed. This agreement requires a formal, written apology from Mom, Dad, and Sloane. This apology must be notarized. It will explicitly acknowledge the history of verbal abuse, emotional manipulation, and financial entitlement. Appendix A, I said, is attached, outlining specific, documented incidents for your convenience. This includes the ambush at my apartment and the pattern of dismissing my achievements while simultaneously inventorying my assets. My mother made a small, strangled sound. Condition 2. Full financial transparency. Assuming the apologies are signed and notarized, Sloane must agree to a full, independent audit of her boutique and personal finances, to be completed within 45 days by a third-party forensic accounting firm, which I will select and pay for. This will include all business and personal bank statements, all credit card statements, and all ledgers for the past 36 months. If you refuse the audit, I looked at Sloane. The agreement is voided, and all potential for aid is permanently withdrawn. Condition 3. Accountability and education. Based on the audit's findings, Sloane must draft a comprehensive business restructuring plan. Furthermore, she must enroll in and provide a certificate of completion for an accredited course on small business finance and inventory management. No funds, of any kind, will even be considered for disbursement until that certificate is on file with the trustee. Condition 4. Communication. All future communication regarding this agreement, or any financial matter, must be conducted exclusively in writing, via a shared email address. All emails will be automatically copied to my attorney, who is the sole trustee of this agreement. Any attempt to circumvent this, a late-night phone call, a guilt-tripping text message, an attempt to ambush me at work, will be considered a major breach. I paused, letting the weight of the structure settle in the warm, food-scented air. Sloane was no longer pale. Her entire face and neck were covered in deep, red, blotchy patches of humiliation and rage. And finally, Condition 5, the financial structure itself. This was the part they were waiting for. This was the money. "The $39,000 you requested is denied," I said. The silence that followed this sentence was profound. It was a vacuum, sucking all the heat and light from the room. My mother's hand, which had been halfway to her wineglass, froze in midair. "However," I continued, "this agreement does not preclude all support. If, and only if, all preceding conditions are met: the apologies, the audit, the business course, the restructuring plan. The Blake Boundary Trust will be authorized to consider releasing a one-time microloan. This loan will not exceed $5,000. It is not a gift. It is a loan, with a formal repayment schedule and a standard interest rate. Any further, potential, future loans will be contingent upon 6 consecutive months of proven, repeatable revenue and strict adherence to the new business plan." I finished. I had not raised my voice. I had not used a single curse word. I had simply presented the terms. "I know this all sounds very formal," I said into the suffocating silence, "but I've learned that formality is the only antidote to a broken informal system. For 31 years, the system in this family has been that my role is to be a silent utility. My accomplishments were to be ignored, and my boundaries were to be violated. But my perceived assets," I looked at my father, "were to be inventoried for family use." I took my phone from my pocket and placed it on the table. "Let's review the data. On November 14th, I announced my promotion to Senior Product Liaison in the family group chat, the one Mom insists we all read. I received. I checked the screen. 0 replies, no congratulations, no great job, just silence. I then pressed the play button on an audio file. It was a voicemail. Sloane's voice, frantic and sharp, filled the dining room. Audio. "Marin, Mom said you're moving. What's your new salary? They must be paying you a ton. You have to tell me. Call me back." I pressed another. My mother's voice, thick with tears, the one she had left me after I'd refused to discuss money on the phone. Audio. I am physically sick with disappointment. I don't know the person you have become. After everything we did for you, to have all that money and just hoard it, it's disgusting." I pressed stop. The silence that rushed back in was deafening. The only sound was the distant, tinny cheering from the football game in the other room. "I am not playing those to embarrass anyone," I said quietly, my gaze level. "I am playing them as evidence. This is the pattern. My achievements are met with silence. My assets are met with demands. My refusal is met with abuse. This, I patted the blue cover of the agreement, is the new system. It is a system based on respect, transparency, and accountability. It is the only system under which I am willing to operate." No one moved. No one spoke. The food on their plates was growing cold. Aunt Karen, a nervous mediator her entire life, was the first to break. She let out a high, tight laugh. "Well, my goodness, that's certainly thorough. Marin, a bit much, isn't it? Lawyers?" My uncle beside her grunted. "Just sign the damn thing, Sloane," he said, already reaching for the ham. "It's just lawyer talk. She's got the money. She's just making you jump through hoops for it. Who cares? Just sign it." My mother shot them both a look of such concentrated venom it could have curdled the gravy. "You are not helping." I looked at my father. He had not said a word. He was not angry. He had pushed his plate away and was reading. He had skipped the emotional preamble and gone straight to the financial clauses. He was reading the definitions, the disbursement structure, the penalties for default. His lips were pursed, his brow furrowed. He was not looking at me like a disobedient daughter. He was squinting, as if seeing a new, complex, and bafflingly competent opponent for the first time. He was, I realized with a cold shock, impressed. Sloane looked at my father, reading. She looked at my mother, who was rigid with fury. She looked at me, my face calm and neutral. She was trapped. There was no one to rescue her. The performance of the fragile victim dissolved, her face crumpling, the mask melting away to reveal the raw, ugly, infantile entitlement underneath. A single hot tear of pure rage spilled onto her cheek. You're turning this family into a company," she choked out, the words thick. This is a contract. You're treating me like I'm a stranger. You're treating us like a business deal." "You're turning this family into a company," Sloane had choked out, her voice wet with rage. "You're treating us like a business deal." I let her accusation hang in the air, a final, failed negotiation. Her face was a mask of furious, childish betrayal. She, who had conducted a financial interrogation in my own home. She, who had demanded access to my salary and stock options. She, who had come here tonight expecting a $39,000 wire transfer based on nothing more than a shared bloodline, was now accusing me of being transactional. My mother looked at me, her eyes pleading. "Fix this. Apologize to her. Make it soft again." I did not speak. I did not defend my position. The presentation was over. I pushed my chair back from the table. The scraping sound was final. I stood up. My mother's face tightened with panic. "Marin, where are you going? Don't you walk away from her." "I'm not," I said. "I'm going to carve the ham." I walked from the dining room to the kitchen sideboard, where the massive, glistening ham sat in its roasting pan, exactly as it had every year. This was, after all, my job. I was the responsible one, the stagehand. I picked up the long, two-pronged fork and the heavy carving knife. I turned back to the ham. This act, this simple, domestic duty, was a more profound dismissal of her tantrum than any word I could have spoken. It was me, returning to my function, my purpose, while her crisis was left, unmanaged, at the table. Sloane was on her feet. "Are you even listening to me? I am talking to you." I ignored her. I centered the fork in the ham's crispy glazed surface and raised the knife, positioning it for the first, perfect slice. I never made the cut. A force, fast and violent, slammed into my side. Sloane had lunged, not just with her hand, but with her whole body. Her left hand grabbed my wrist, the one holding the knife, forcing it down. "Don't you dare ignore me!" she screamed. And then, with her right hand, she swung. It was not a small, emotional tap. It was a full palm, open-handed, backswing and follow-through slap. Her hand connected with the side of my face with a sound that was shocking in its intimacy. It was a sharp, wet crack, a sound that did not belong in a room filled with the smell of cinnamon and the clatter of silverware. It was the sound of a final line being crossed. The world stopped. Every single conversation at the table, Aunt Karen's chatter, my uncle's grumbling, ended in a sudden, sharp gasp. My uncle, his hand frozen on its way to the breadbasket. My mother, her mouth open, a silent, "Oh." The sting on my cheek was immediate, a blooming hot flower of pain. I could feel the print of her fingers. I could smell the ham, sharp and sweet, and the faint, metallic scent of her rings. I did not move. I did not flinch. I did not retaliate. I did not drop the knife. I looked very slowly across the table to the head. My father? He saw the red mark already blooming on my skin. He saw his younger daughter, standing still, a carving knife in her hand, having just been struck by his older daughter. He processed this information. His mouth opened. And he spoke. "Lower your voice," he said. The words, the exact words, the only words he had. He was not concerned with the violence. He was not concerned with the attack. He was concerned, as he had always been, with the noise, the unladdiness of it all, the disruption to the holiday peace. The silence that followed his command was a new, terrible, profound thing. It was a vacuum. The only sound in the entire house was the distant, meaningless roar of the crowd from the television in the other room. This was the moment, the final data point.